2010 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. Please stand and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, yes, sir. You need a gavel.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm not sure the microphones are on, are they? Okay. All right. At this time, we'd like to introduce the board members, starting to my right.
My name's Walt Recook. Scott Kilgore.
Gary Willis.
Nancy Plesnarski.
Marcia Parsons.
John McCrae.
Did everybody see the March meeting minutes? Anybody like to make a motion?
I think I read this a long time ago.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of March 2010 minutes.
We have a second.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Let it be known that passed 6-0. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-legal board composed of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. The board is charged with hearing requests for variances from the standards of the zoning ordinance and appeals of administrative determination. With regard to decisions on primary variances, the board's basis for decision is provided by 4 considerations. A, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. And B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. And C, relief if granted would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good in surrounding properties. And D, that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured and that substantial justice is done. A sign variance may only be approved under the following circumstance: where existing foliage or structures bring about a hardship whereby a sign meeting minimum letter size, square footage, and height requirements cannot be read from an adjoining public road. This time I would like to present petition number B10-004. Angela, would you please present
This is variance number B10-004, 14510 Thompson Road. The site includes an existing single-family home which sits on 2.48 acres. The property is located in the Northwest Fulton overlay. The property consists of an existing 2-story brick residence. The house is located on the highest portion of the lot, which slopes down to a stream, which forms the northern border of the lot. The lot is heavily vegetated. The applicant, Tony Lair, proposes to build an addition to the house to possibly be used as an in-law suite. The addition will encroach into the 50-foot rear yard setback by 14.6 feet. Section 64.416 states that the minimum rear yard for property zoned AG1 is 50 feet. By definition, structures are not allowed in minimum yards. Therefore, a variance is required. Design Review Board courtesy review. The DRB review is not required for this petition. Additional department comments. Staff held a focus meeting on April 28, 2010, at which the following comments were provided. Building plan review and site plan review, no issues. The arborist submitted the following. There are 2 specimen trees in the rear building setback at or near where the building is to be placed, 27-inch white oak and a 30-inch white oak. The specimen trees show that 27 inches will require recompense as required in the tree protection ordinance and administrative guidelines on site with the installation of 17 4-inch caliper trees or contribution to the tree fund in the amount of $8,500. The tree shown to be 30 inches will require recompense in the critical root zone if the critical root zone is disturbed. Recompense for said trees would be 21 4-inch caliper trees or contribution of $10,500 into the city tree fund. DOT, no issues. Standards for consideration. The approval of a variance is based on the following considerations. Relief, if granted, would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. There are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. Relief, if granted, would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties, that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured, and that substantial justice is done. The applicant addresses the considerations as follows. The applicant states that the request will in no way jeopardize the public safety, health, or welfare of the people of Milton. He explains that the configuration and topography of the property necessitated the placement of the existing house along the higher southwestern portion of the lot. The proposed addition would work best attached to the main house on the main level. The applicant states that to build an addition to the house in any other location would place it along a steep slope portion of the current structure. This design would be destructive to the topography due to the required grading and possible erosion, he continues. This placement would necessitate the removal of many trees and dramatically alter the landscape. The encroachment into the rear setback will not disturb the neighbors. The nearest structure is a barn at least 100 feet from the property line. Recommended conditions. Should the board choose to approve the application, staff recommends the following conditions. Recompense shall be provided for the 27-inch white oak and the 30-inch white oak for the City of Milton's arborist approval. And I did want to clarify one thing about the trees. I believe the arborist has made a site visit, and the 27-inch was actually measured at 25.
About 20, my notes were according to what was submitted, and when I actually did my site visit, the one specimen tree, the 27-inch, is actually a 26-inch caliper tree, so that does not meet the specimen size requirement, so there would be no recompense for that tree. And I don't know if I just want to make comments now, per that plan too, it appears that they would be able to stay away from that other tree. They have the room to do that, so if he encroaches, then he would have to recompense, but it appears that he could stay away from it.
Okay, this concludes staff presentation.
Any questions for staff? Yes, sir.
If I looked at your recommended conditions, so if I looked at that, you're basically saying the recompense shall only be provided for the 30-inch white oak? Is that what you're stating?
No, the 27 will not need recompense.
Correct. So I
And
can
that's the
cross
one
that
that
out.
would definitely be impacted if he were to
Right.
construct there. Per this plan, and being at the site, it appears that he could stay out of the critical root zone in the 30-inch caliper tree. So
Okay.
per this plan, we don't need recompense. Of course, like I said, if he's got the place to put the fence up. If he gets inside of it, then that's a different issue. But
So you're saying no conditions?
no conditions from the arborist, correct?
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? At this time, I'd like the applicant to come forward to present. And if you would state your name and address, we would certainly appreciate it.
Did I feel it? My name is Tony Lair at 14510 Thompson Road. I'm the homeowner of the site for the variance. Any particular question you want me to respond to, or?
Is there any opening statement that you'd like to make?
Oh, okay. Yeah, basically, when we built the house 10 years ago, we made very careful attention to keep as much of the trees on the property. If any of you have actually made a visit to the site, you'll see that we have a lot of tree coverage. So it's not our intent to remove any trees if we can avoid impacting any trees on the perimeter of the property. And if there's a way that we can construct the addition to avoid impacting the trees, we would do that.
Any questions from the board to the applicant? Yes, ma'am.
On your proposed addition, is there a way that you can move that forward so it's out of any of the roof line?
Away from the roof line? Root. Okay. We would like to have moved the addition at an angle along the back part of the property line, but in doing so, it would have impacted the side more with some of the trees and some of the setbacks on the side of the property, which is next to the neighbor directly to the east of us instead of the back property line. So that was a consideration.
And the breezeway or whatever walkway that you have, can that be shortened in your plan?
What?
To accommodate that?
Do you have a proper? Do you have the? Are you looking at the site plan?
I am.
The back property line, as it relates to the position of our house as it stands, there's a little corner to the house that comes closest to the back property line, and the breezeway is not really material to the position of the existing house and the rear property line and the space between the two, in the proposed addition. So the breezeway, I don't know if you're following me or not, is not really material to minimizing any impact on the setback. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
On your side of your house, are you going to put a garage underneath this living area?
No, we were just going to put a basement underneath there because there's a slope there, and we felt that to keep the addition at the same elevation as the main house, just either build up the foundation to the same level or put a basement in.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Right. Looking at the materials in the packet, I see you've got a site survey and it's well drawn and everything. Do you have any elevations of this proposed structure?
I do. I have yes, some preliminary because we didn't go to the expense of putting the whole plan together because, of course, of what we're here to do tonight. But certainly.
Okay.
Sure.
Sir, while we're looking at those, a couple more questions for you. Have you done any, I know in the photographs there's no disturbance that I can see, but have you done any earthwork or anything thus
No.
far?
Oh no. We haven't touched the property.
Okay. Do you have any letters from your neighbor that is directly, I guess, in the line of sight of this proposed construction area?
No, we don't have any letters, but if that's something that you want to see, I think we can attain those without any problem. We've had conversations with both neighbors, and we're they're very good people, and they understand what we want to do.
Okay. And haven't seen the.
They haven't expressed any issues whatsoever because there's such a distance between their structures and the property line itself.
Right. However, the variance is for a rear yard setback, so, obviously those are intended to avoid houses abutting one another to the greatest extent possible, so that's why we ask.
Yeah, I understand.
I also noticed, just looking at the overhead, that there's a retaining wall here on the rear of the house.
That's right.
Is it going to remain in place?
Under the proposed, yes, sir.
Okay.
There will be some encroachment on the retaining wall, especially if we go forward with a basement style plan. We'd probably cut that off. It would shorten it. I think the plan that's floating around there I think it shortens it maybe by a half.
When you retained a designer, GC, or anybody for this
Well, we have retained Garrell and Associates, which was the.
surveyor?
Well, no, we had a surveyor. Yes, we retained a surveyor to do the site plan for your purposes.
The reason I ask is I would ask them if they were present, maybe you could tell me, when they developed this idea based on what you told them you wanted, was the rear yard setback part of their consideration when they developed this plan? One thing we don't try and do is redesign sites when applicants come to us, but it seems to me, I've got some background in construction, that, maybe if they were working within that parameter, that this is a site that could both meet your intent and, not need a variance on our end.
Well, certainly. No, certainly. We started with a structure that would meet our immediate family needs with regards to what we want to do with that structure once it's built. And the considerations that we had in doing so were size of the structure and the purpose of the structure. We didn't make it too big for what we wanted. Matter of fact, I think the structure is really a small footprint.
It's a 14-foot overlap per our materials.
Okay.
If you consider the overall size of your property, the house, and the structure being proposed, that's a fairly minimal amount. That's why I asked,
Okay.
With the minor modification, I realize that you're working with some unique topography in terms of the slope.
Right.
But it seems to me, just a cursory glance, that maybe it could be worked around in such a way that you wouldn't need the variance that you're asking for.
Well, certainly, because we don't want to. It would be much easier for us to build it without having to go through the process that we're here doing today. It would have required us to, first of all, the size of the structure would have been different, smaller, which probably would make it awkward. So what we don't want to have is an addition that is not the size and the scope that's consistent with the main house. And if we were to not encroach upon the setback, we would basically chop off the corner of the addition, which kind of looks goofy too. And I'm not the person to speak of. This is my wife, and she's more in tune with what's goofy and what's not. Certainly not me. But I think when we put all those things together, it's better for us to come in front of you to see if we can bridge some of those difficulties. Because if we can't, we could set it at an angle that kind of looks goofy, and all these different things that we batted around as different options just really didn't make the project. It just didn't make it consistent with what we had. And certainly, if we had built the house with the knowledge that at some point we would do an addition, and we had the forethought to do so, and made those plans in the beginning, we probably would position the house in a different spot.
I'm assuming that this new addition will require underground utilities and
Like plumbing and no, I think for the most part, we will tie it into the main house.
Okay.
So we wouldn't have to, we don't want to, again, if you go by the house, you would see that, we built this on a custom kind of an arrangement. This was, we didn't clear cut anything. We surgically placed this house in the middle of a very wooded lot. And for the first 2 or 3 years, every storm that came by, and even today, we kind of are fearful because we have a lot of trees lining the whole perimeter of the house. But we are willing to live in those conditions because we just like the whole environment of how the house sits on the lot.
All right, one final question, I promise. Are you under any time constraint? I know you call them in-law suites, but you literally have an in-law breathing down your neck.
Well, my parents are in their 80s, and there's no impending reason to have this structure today.
Okay.
But we've been in this process for a better part of a year, and a lot of that's our fault because this is a learning process for us.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm looking at this document, and I'm seeing you've got 26 feet of office space, kitchen, and whatever lengthwise to the back, and then you've got 10 foot of deck, is that correct?
Yeah, but I don't think that's part of the variance that we're talking about.
I think it is, isn't it, Angela? Because it looks like there might be about 36 feet on the survey. So are we talking about part of that encroachment being deck?
On the official site plan, I believe a deck can encroach into a setback by like 3 feet.
Because if I take your mark on the survey that he presented, it looks like it's about 36 feet for the addition, and on this plan that he submitted, he's got 26 feet of actual enclosed structure and 10 feet of deck. So that would be 36, about 36. Which changes my thought process is if part of it's a deck.
Right, that would have to be included in the variance, and we probably need to see how that would impact the trees too.
Well, we probably wouldn't have a deck in that case.
But that's not what I'm seeing, and I don't know if I'm seeing it right or not. I've got
Is that part of their application, though?
on the.
No, this is the first I've heard about a deck, so,
Well, it's on here.
yeah.
'Cause
I don't have that.
He's got 26 feet and then 10, which is basically the 36 that we see on the survey.
For the whole thing. Yeah, it's, I mean, I
Do you want this document?
Yes, that is
Help me understand it.
structure.
Yeah, this is showing the total. 36, and this is 36 right here. So you don't have to do it.
Okay.
Was it this way? Is the deck coming here or is it over here?
On there, he's got 26 feet here, and Okay, what are we doing?
If you're looking at the site plan, it's got the full foundation, and that's that includes the basement, and on top of that is a porch.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So that would be treated as,
Yeah, I didn't know if my wife added a deck on between here and the last night. That happens in my house.
Any other questions for the applicant? As you can see, there is no public comment. You do have the opportunity, sir, to make a closing statement if you'd like to make one.
I think this project is not intended to do any harm to the property or any of the impact on our neighbors. We really love where we live, and I think our neighbors understand. We have a sort of a good understanding of why we live where we live and some of the values that we have relative to the environment that we have where we live. So we're not going to move in a direction which would destroy any of that kind of living stand that we have in Milton. Matter of fact, even if there was an assessment by the arborist relative to the keeping of those trees or not, I never intended to take those trees down, even though our builder said they probably needed to go. Does that make sense? Because I think that's the mentality that they have, and I would. My opinion would be, well, let's do what we can, especially if there's margin that we can work with to protect the root system, because some of those trees are probably the most, the one at White Oak that was mentioned during the introduction is the one that's the one we would like to keep, because it provides such a great canopy over that area of the property.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I'm going
That's
to
right.
hone in on this a little more. Because your wife wants a deck, I understand that. Is it necessary to do a full basement underneath the deck? That's what I'm hearing, what the plan is. 'Cause
Yeah.
that would really protect that root line so much more, would it not? If it was just a deck?
Yeah, I mean, and again, if it's a matter of a couple of feet, I think we would move to do that.
It's 10 feet.
Well,
That's like not doing a full basement under the deck. Just doing a deck and not.
just a deck and not a basement underneath the deck.
Correct. Do a basement under the living structure, the enclosed structure, and then just not doing the basement that far out.
Yeah.
Dry below.
Say it again. I didn't hear you.
You could do dry below and have.
What's that? Well, you'll have to talk to my wife about that. I'm not opposed to, I think if there's enough square footage in there that they would accommodate and create a living space that makes the project worthwhile, I would say yes. I think the intent was to have a foundation that allow for a porch, because what there is in the back is a little bit of a view out the back towards a creek, and I don't think she likes to have a wood deck. I think she wants to have a porch. With a tile, or you know what I'm saying? Something you can walk out. It's not a wood frame kind of a thing. I think if it came down to a small adjustment relative to how much of a space we're creating in the basement to protect the trees or the variance, I think we would do that. But I think if it's 10 feet, if we're going to encroach, we might as well really encroach. I mean, I think those are some of the things that came into play.
So in other words, you're an advocate. If you're going to sin, you're going to sin real bad. I just want to make sure.
I don't, I think if the plan, the way it is, would only encroach a foot, then we would have backed it up and we wouldn't be here. But the plan already encroached.
Any questions for staff from the board? At this time, I'd like to close the public hearing. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
This time, anybody like to make a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move to defer petition number B01-004. But justification is that it sounds to me like the applicant might like to way that he can meet his intent, functionality, and also avoid having to ask for a variance.
So, second.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes, sir.
I guess I understand, the problem that I have is that, as he mentioned, the reason he didn't develop a whole big plan is because he wanted to see if what he's conceiving with at least will work. And, one of the problems in any kind of variance is, you can maybe develop a plan and say, okay, well, now we could do it a little bit different, we could do less, we could do a little bit more, we could move things over. I think the real issue is if we can potentially say, all right, you're asking us for, what is it, 17.5 feet variance in that one corner, make it work with 14. I mean, I'm picking an arbitrary number, but basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it not, excuse me, it is. It's 14.6 encroachment into the side yard setback. So that's, I think the plan makes it look a little bit worse than it is, or am I misreading the 14.6? Is it, in other words, is it 14.6 from 50? In other words, they're encroaching into it 35.4 feet, or are they only encroaching into 14.6?
The encroachment is 14.6.
So probably the drawing looks a lot worse than perhaps it really is, because the drawing makes like that area, 14 feet, in my view, is less than, well, it's probably the size of most length of cars nowadays. I used to say it's 20 foot, but it's not. It's more like, I guess 2 bathtubs put together. So it may be a little bit more than what's shown there, but less than what's shown there. But I don't know if I want to put a lot of brain power into this, and for that matter, asking him to do a lot more. But for 2 bathtubs, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that his neighbors are far away, and I guess he wants to make his parents happy, which God Almighty, I know I'd like to keep mine happy if they were both living, or at least one is still living, but I understand wanting to keep them closer. So I guess I'm willing to let them work it out. I don't see any neighbors here that are also objecting to this. Obviously, he must either be a great guy that keeps his neighbors very happy, or they have better things to do on a May day. But I just don't feel like there's a real big impetus on my part, at least, for making him go through this effort for just a measly 14.6 feet.
And another thing I would like to say to piggyback onto that is because Mark's already said that the one tree was 26 inches, so there'll be no recompense for that one. And they shouldn't encroach on the 30-inch one whatsoever, so there's not going to be a recompense on that one either. So to send him back to spend another $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, $12,000 for different drawings, as a homeowner, Milton, to me, just doesn't make any sense to have him go through that kind of amount of money for 14 feet. I just think that's wrong, but that's just my viewpoint. Anyone else?
Well, I don't know. I would love to see that tree protected a little more for recompense, a tape measure can slip an inch somewhere or something,
I mean, this is
I know,
I mean,
it's
Mark-
only 1 inch.
Mark's the city employee, so I mean, if we're gonna, at some point we have to say that the staff knows what they're doing.
I didn't say you didn't.
No.
I just said tape measures can stretch.
Not a metal one.
Yeah, you did a metal one
Yeah.
on a tree?
It's metal.
It's going to be measured at breast height for
4.5
that
feet.
size.
I would like a little recompense, I guess, if it was ever possible. I know it doesn't fit the criteria. I said I would.
Any other questions for staff?
Well, let me mention about that tree issue. If you really feel it's a big issue, we can always ask him to plant 2 trees, plant us 2 2-inch trees.
2 inch?
I mean, I hate to plant a lot bigger trees,
Uh-huh.
especially this time of year, because they just struggle a lot more and your root ball has to be
Yeah.
so big. And that's where I'm thinking that would be something. Now, I'm not saying there's probably not a lot of trees. Maybe he doesn't want any trees because he's going to have pasture land for horses, but maybe that's something in consideration that we ask. I'm just brainstorming.
Yes, smaller trees do grow
Yeah,
faster
they do,
than larger
right.
trees. They'll pass each other by a long shot.
Any other questions for staff? Any other discussion? All right, at this time, let's take a vote. The motion on the floor is to defer while the applicant has time to consider the site with the builder. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All opposed, please raise your right hand. Okay, motion did not pass, 5-1. Do we have another motion on the floor? Since I can't make them.
You could break them, though.
Mr. Reed Cook, go right ahead.
I'm going to make a motion for approval of RZ V10-004 to allow, in addition to the house, to encroach 14.6 feet into the 50-foot rear yard setback. And I would like to condition that to plant 2 2-inch hardwood trees somewhere on the property. And the reason for my recommendation is that I think that they are making effort to stay within the I guess the general property conditions of the neighborhood, that the relief if granted won't cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties, and that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured and substantial justice is done, and there will be no unnecessary hardship being created due to the size or shape or topography of I think I can understand the topography issue, that they do have a topography that's better in that location for placing a home that would be on the main floor level versus one that would be somewhere where they have to build up the land a lot more and do more disturbance. So I can understand being in this location. That's more or less my reason.
Do we have a second?
Second it.
We have a second. Any discussion on the motion?
I would just point out that while I definitely think Mr. Lair, means what he says, he's not trying to disturb the surrounding area, or at least trying to do so at a minimum degree. I'm not sure that this particular site has such a unnatural or unusual topography that a slight alteration to the site plan would not be able to mitigate the need for a variance. That's my take.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I think I would disagree with that, John. He's got an awfully steep slope in the back. He would have to disturb a lot of trees over there. He has almost enough room on this side. It ties in naturally with his house. I do feel that there are extraordinary and exceptional situations in this case. This is a unique shape, and with the slope in the back, I think I'd rather see it where he's got it, just from what I've seen of a lot. Just my position on this.
Any other discussion? Okay, the motion on the floor is to approve V10-004 to allow an addition into the rear yard setback of 14.6 feet with a condition that the applicant will plant 2 2-inch hardwood trees somewhere on his property. All in favor, please raise your right hand. same. Let it be known that it passed 5-1. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We'd be happy to.
Good luck.
Yeah. We found out the Woodland Street.
Uh,
Age Woodland Street.
I'm sure Mark will be in contact with you constantly as you go through there.
Well, good luck to you and your parents.
No, thank
Hope
you.
everything goes well for you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody's time.
Yeah, it looks like it needs to go out. I need, well, no, this is fine, we just wanted to make sure you have one. I need one for the record.
Do you have a copy of this besides?
This big bonfire at the
Well, you
end
know,
of the year.
You bald-headed guys, bald-headed guys, I don't understand.
Okay, so I can get this back. Or remind Tanika to ask me.
All right, chief, we'll pull the trigger.
Are you gonna come tomorrow?
You can talk over, you're in charge.
Or your wife?
Just want to check the time again.
Oh, okay.
Braves game still 0-0. I'm used to making women mad.
I said 8 o'clock. I've got you in my hand.
All right, we got a man on first.
Is there any other business?
Sorry.
I had a question for staff.
Yes, sir.
I noticed on the email version of our agenda, there were some cases on there. That's very good, thanks.
I think that was the June agenda.
Okay.
I was trying to.
We have some.
Yes.
Any other questions or any other business? This time we need a motion to adjourn since I can't do it.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
But is it something happening with you?
Yes, I'm gonna
Which you want-
have a minute after our meeting.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
I'll take a second.
All in favor of adjourning, raise your right hand. Opposed?
There is no left, is that?
No, that's good enough.